Is this cool enough yet? Cheers to the future.
Cheers to the future.
Cheers to our unlimited future.
Unlimited future. Unlimited.
Ooh.
Let's start there. Let's start with unlimited. What does unlimited mean to you, Leigh?
Well, it's the opposite of limited, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what it means.
Not just lots of things, like not just quantity of many things. Let's discuss the name of the podcast with the listeners, because
I think that's a great place to start.
It's probably one of the only episodes where we will discuss the name, because from now on you're going to know that it's called Unlimited. So yeah, what does it mean to you? How did we come up with the name?
Well, it's funny, isn't it? It's probably been a sort of talking point of ours for quite a while, talking into like limiting beliefs. And I know you talk about this a lot in your coaching spaces, and we talk about it a lot in education as well. So that's been swirling around, talking about breaking limiting beliefs. And then we started to draw parallels, I think, with some of our messaging and some of our quotes. And one of our quotes for our business is limitless potential. And so that we started to join the dots. It's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then it was like, okay, what's the opposite of limited beliefs, but not limitless potential? It's unlimited, like unlimited beliefs and unlimited living and unlimited potential. And I like the way you kind of took it a step further as well. We broke the word, which is cool.
Yeah, I think it's important for us at this early stage of the podcast to speak into the why behind the name, because everything that we do is very thoughtful. Like, we try to put a lot of thought into what we do, whilst also not overthinking. And I think we had the perfect start to the podcast in the last episode, because we didn't have a name in the last episode, but it just goes to show, and it goes to prove that not everything needs to be quote unquote perfect before we start. Like, the fact that we started, we got given the name, because I feel like we stalled on the name for months. Like, we have this shared note and there's probably like 100 podcast names, potential names. And, we wanted to make it congruent with what we do and with our business, but we also wanted to keep it open enough so that it can change and evolve, and it could potentially turn into something else. So unlimited feels very free. It feels very freeing to me right now. Like, that is kind of like what I am in pursuit of, is becoming unlimited. And same with Leigh. Like, as business partners, as friends, as human beings on this world, we're trying to explore the outer limits of limits, and the opposite of that is becoming unlimited. So this podcast is essentially going to be us sharing stories about our journey in pursuit of becoming unlimited, which is a life without limits. Now, I actually deeped this one yesterday, and I thought, well, there's always going to be some limits, because we understand the game that we're in. We can't be going out and fucking killing people or doing stupid shit or not paying taxes. And, there is rules of the game that we're in, but the fact that we understand that it's a game, we can push the outer echelons of it and see where that takes us. So yeah, unlimited felt right. It felt like it was the right name for the podcast. And
I love there's so much duality in the word as well. Like, I loved it when we were doing a bit of like sort of brand research and brand work on this. Yep, that'll do it. Yeah. I love it when we were doing some brand work and brand research, and when we were looking at the design of the word and how the word's going to be seen. I think it was your idea to actually break the word up. So have the U and the N, and then limited. And I love the duality in that, because if you take unlimited as a word just on its own, that means just exponential, like there's just no end, which is cool, which is like the clouds of it, which is like just infinite, which is beautiful. We like to play in that space. But when you break the word and unlimited, it's like we've unlimited ourselves. So we've taken our limited selves and then just undone it, which I really like the play on of that, to break that word. And that puts the duality in there. It's almost got like two meanings. Yes, there's unlimited possibility, but there was also a process of unlimiting ourselves, which is the journey that we're on.
Totally. And I think it's a play with words. It's another play with words for our tagline, which is limitless potential for 101. But, you know, even in our coaching spaces, we're working with people to help them become unlimited as well, because a lot of the limits that we have been given, and I say that we have been given them because they're not like part of us. Like a lot of the limits that people have, from my experience, are actually borrowed. They're from somebody else. And, you know, when I reflect upon my career so far in the hair industry, I've very much lived from an unlimited place. Like I never really played into the game of limits.
Yeah.
Like whenever there was limits, I would still test them and push them and always find another way. So unlimited is a really nice play with words in terms of, yeah, it's another way of saying limitless potential. It's another way of saying without limits, no limits. Take what you want, take what you will. But what we're going to be doing on this podcast is sharing our journey, sharing our experiences up to this point. Like we said in the last podcast, there's a lot of story time that we need to catch up on from people who listened to our previous podcast and now who are listening to this one. There's a bit of a chunk there in the middle of story time that we need to catch up on. And I feel like that story time has played a big part in who we are right now, because I feel like the people that are sitting on the other side of the screen here are different people compared to like what we were and who we were even 6 months ago. And I think, you know, every week now, living life without limits essentially is extremely freeing. And in the current industry that we're in, which is the hair industry, I see a lot of people caught up in their own limiting beliefs. And there's a lot of I can't language. There's a lot of that energy. And what we're trying to do is really reframe that and dissolve all of the problems that people think that they have, because it's actually not solving problems, because solving problems kind of speaks to the fact that there's something wrong. There's nothing wrong. It's just, let's look at life another way. Let's look at life in a different way. And live better. Like,
yeah. Live to a higher potential. You know, I don't like to say our highest potential. I know a lot of people say that, but you know, who knows what the highest potential is, but a higher potential. And like Owen touched on, a lot of people's limits are borrowed. They're from somebody else. And I have the utmost compassion for those people, because that was me once. And I'm sure yourself, Owen, you've broken through a lot of those, and I've seen you break through a lot of them. And yeah, I think that's why we're so passionate about these coaching spaces and the educational spaces, because it's given us a lot of freedom. And it's not always physical freedom either. It's mental freedom. That's where it is. It's freedom in the mind. And
emotional freedom.
Yeah, emotional freedom. I often break the two up. I think we're simultaneously focusing on both. We're focusing on the physical freedom and the emotional and psychological freedom. But that's huge. That's been huge for me.
And even like one of our biggest pursuits right now with our lives and business, and something that a journey that we're on together, is trying to become location free. And I think, you know, sharing that journey through a podcast and through a weekly podcast, let's just put that one out there, because that's where this is going to change the game compared to last time, is the fact that this podcast is going to be weekly. Weekly frequency, because we have these types of conversations on a daily basis. Maybe we don't elaborate and go into as much depth as we are right now because of this setup, but it's not too different.
No.
It's not too
They're meant to be 10-minute business catch-ups.
Yeah.
And they could go on for 10 hours, I think. Most of them go for an hour. So
yeah, it's usually about the hour mark, isn't it? Sometimes more. But yeah, it's like, it's a shame not to share that with you guys, because, if we're in the education space and if we say that our purpose and our mission is to empower and help, actually sharing the journey and showing you guys the insights into what we're learning along the way is super important. And I think when we don't do it weekly, we're actually missing really big opportunities, because every single day, let alone every single week, every single day there's new things that are coming to the surface. Every single day there's new lessons that are coming to the surface. Every single day something is evolving or changing at a rapid rate. So to not share that would be doing ourselves a disservice as well, because we're missing a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
And I've been really excited to get back into the long form content, because I feel like it's where we thrive. We need a little bit of runway for the plane to take off. I find the really short conversations with people difficult these days. Like when I meet somebody, for example, and I know what my day looks like in my head, and I don't particularly have the space or the capacity to get into a conversation with them about life. It takes me probably 5 to 10 minutes to really suss somebody out and see, okay, how far can I really push this conversation, or how far can I go here? And if I can't get into these conversations, then I'm not going to attract more of these conversations. So I think this podcast is going to actually be a magnet and bring more people to us that are aligned and share the same values, share the same mission. And that's something that, even in our education business right now, we've done really well, because we actually don't really need that many people to come to our classes for us to live freely. And the reason why, even to briefly touch on it, the reason why it's priced in that way is because it qualifies the audience. I'm trying to qualify nearly everything in my life right now. Every interaction, every meetup, every friendship, every relationship comes with a question mark and some curiosity. And it's like, is this actually, am I doing the thing that is the best for me right now and for where I want to go with my future? Or am I just being a people pleaser and wanting to manipulate how people see me?
Yeah. And so for anybody listening who's thinking, oh, that sounds selfish, well, I think that's where the tipping point is. And for what Owen's talking about there, that's him choosing his life, not having his life chosen for him. And he mentioned it right at the end there about being a people pleaser. Well, what's that? That's a trauma pattern and borrowed conditioning. And one of the weird things about life in this modern age is we're not taught, or it's a foreign concept, that it's okay to have your preferences in life. And that comes with a lot of courage. That comes with a lot of learning. You've got to learn a lot about yourself. You got to learn about boundaries. You got to learn about your energy, what makes you thrive, what makes you not. But I think it's really, really important to start choosing your life rather than have it chosen for you. And that is, we're trying to completely embody that in all of our choices. And I'm exactly the same, with all of my interactions, and because I love these kinds of conversations. If anybody wants to have this conversation, I'm all for it. But if it's about the weather, or if it's about something that doesn't really matter, then I'm not always up for that conversation. But I still do practice them. I still trying to be present. Yesterday, I had a bit of a gathering with some people that I didn't know. And I was journaling in the morning, and one of my intentions for the day was to be present. And that means not just disregarding everybody, but that means being present and in the moment, and maybe having that conversation that I don't normally want to have. But again, what does that say? That's me choosing my life. Nobody forced me to have those conversations. I woke up and I looked at my journal and I was right, one of my intentions today is to be present. And I chose that and I was okay with it. And I came away energized, because anytime I felt like I was getting a bit overwhelmed, the energetic bubble went up and I just kind of protected myself, protected my energy. And it worked out for the better.
Nice. I had a little reframe on selfishness over the weekend and the whole people pleasers thing, and you know, that whole conversation around choosing yourself, and is that a selfish thing? Well, is it, and this is a really great reframe, is it not more selfish to lead somebody on to manipulate their view of you, even though you don't want to be their friend?
Yeah, exactly.
Because like not telling somebody your true authentic expression of how you feel, for example, you know, the more and more we do cool things in the hair industry, the more and more people want to meet us for coffee, or they want to meet us for this, or they want to meet us for that. And you know, not just people in hair, but like I've got people who always, you know, I go to breath work, I go to different things, and people are asking to be friends, I guess you could say. And there's never, I mean this in the nicest way possible, but sometimes there's just not an alignment, or I don't feel energetically pulled towards that relationship at this particular point. It doesn't mean I don't like that person, but it just means that I want to protect my energy because I don't have the capacity right now. And for me to go against myself, abandon myself to meet this person just so that I can manipulate how they view me, so that I'm a nice person, is that not more selfish? Because I'm like leading them on to think that like this is something else, when really I'm just doing it to fulfill my own needs.
Yeah.
That was a reframe I had over the weekend, and I was like,
and
wow. But like in our industry, and would you say now, like to speak to what you were saying, Leigh, would you say now, since we're not meeting as many people and we're not cutting as many people's hair, the conversations about the weather and all the little current affair bits and pieces are getting more difficult?
Yeah. What I've experienced is they're actually getting less as well, because I've curated, and this is an absolute blessing. I had this realization the other day, like I've curated such a clientele that a lot of the times, I think 8 times out of 10, the client will jump in the chair and be like, right, what are we going to learn now? What are we talking about now? They don't even bother talking about the weather, because they know me. They know that that's just not going to fly with me. I'll probably just get rid of that straight away. And so, yeah, I've been very fortunate to curate a really cool group of clients like that, which is awesome. But something that I've kind of learned as well, which is to your point on that reframe through sort of holistic health studies, is that to become selfless, you have to become selfish. Because to not put yourself first and to be able to show up as your optimal self, well, that's not too good for anybody, really, you know. And look, we get it. There's days where we're just not functioning at 100%, and that's fine. You know, you got to do your best in those days. But on the whole, as a general kind of consensus for life, I think we've got very selfish in terms of thinking of ourselves first, so that we can be selfless in a really, really like efficient and effective way. And that comes in all areas of life. That comes in the way we like look after ourselves, you know, what we eat, how we move, how we think, all that stuff. And like Owen just said, our relationships, what we talk about, what we read, what we look at on the internet, everything that we consume, it's all calculated and thought about. And not even to like a neurotic kind of degree either. There's an ease with it. There's a gentleness with it as well.
Yeah. And I when I think about that as well, it's like, okay, well, what kind of leadership is that showing to anybody? Like I often put my future kids into the equation from time to time and think, well, what kind of person would I want to be for them? Somebody who just says yes to everything, like yes man. And like, I've been there and I've done that. And the reason I speak into all these things is because we've been there and done that, and I've been there and done that. And I think it's part of our industry. We're conditioned to be people pleasers because that's what makes money, because the client is always right and all that fucking bullshit, like we spoke about in the last podcast. But these days I often listen to my instincts. I often listen to my gut feeling about something, and if something energetically feels good, I'll go and do it, and I'll meet people for coffee. Like, even though I might have a lot of this work to do on certain days that I need to do, don't need to do anything, but that I want to do, essentially. Sometimes I'll prioritize the catch up, because we are human beings. Sometimes we're not just optimization machines. You know, if we're optimizing everything just from a performance lens, then that can be a dangerous game to play as well, because then we lose out in our relationships with people. And often, you know, the universe presents us with opportunities and with people and with circumstances to reveal to us where we're not free, but also to reveal opportunities and potentials and possibilities, and to give us the lessons that we need in that moment. For example, like, I met a mate a couple of weeks back, maybe like 3-4 weeks ago, for coffee. Hadn't met him in a long time, really enjoy his company. But even on that day, I was like, should I really be doing this right now? Like, should I really be going to meet this guy? Because like, I've got all this other stuff to do. And I started getting in my head about that. And then I was like, nah, you know what? Like, it feels like right to do it. So I went and did it. And I met somebody else when I was there that I hadn't seen in like over a year. She just walked past, and she was part of the business coaching group that I was in. And we'd never really connected properly, me and her. And then like, even in that few minutes of the interaction that I had with her, I had got so much from it. Like, it was like super profound. And we caught up like a week later and had coffee ourselves. And, you know, I planned it for an hour, but we ended up speaking for like 4 hours. And it was just amazing. I could have went for 6, 7, 8 hours. So like, that filled my cup up more than any, you know, work could have in that moment. So yeah, sometimes it's also important to nurture the relationships, but from a place of awareness, from a lens of awareness of, okay, what am I doing this for? How much do I know myself? Am I doing it to be a people pleaser and for people to like me? Or the opposite?
Yeah, back to your point about doing that through haircutting. I just don't know how sustainable that practice is and how true that practice is, you know, because I've started talking about this a little bit in our $1 million consultation classes, talking about task-based haircutting, which is, I think, what a lot of us have done over the years, and I think what a lot of people do. They turn the haircut. I mean, I've done this, and I've got to have compassion for myself before I knew any better. I hear these classic questions. Tell me what you don't like about your hair. Tell me what hasn't worked. Tell me who messed it up before. All the things that you don't like. Tell me all the negatives. I'll turn that into a task, and I'll try and show you how good I am at completing those tasks. And then when I complete those tasks, at all costs, if you're happy, I'm happy. Now, that doesn't seem like a great kind of place for me. I think that feels like disempowerment. That feels like negativity. And for those out there, you know, I have so many of these conversations. You know, I just love making people feel great. Love making people feel great through hair. Yeah, but where our industry is right now, I don't know if it's net positive, because for me, what I've realized is what I spent a lot of my career doing was compounding people's negatives. So they would tell me what they didn't like about their hair. I would agree with them, which is doubling down on that negative. And then they just now have this belief pattern that there's a problem and there's something wrong. And I made money out of that. Now, making money out of doubling down on people's negatives, I'm not sure if that's a great idea. Now, what we teach in our $1 Million Consultation System is the complete opposite. A system and a method of empowerment. And it looks a lot different. It stays really high level. It all stays in the positive realm. Because I just don't know if that's good for people. You know, like really when I get deep in my heart, does that sit well with me to be making money out of people's insecurities and disempowerment? Absolutely not. I would love to share, bring value, and bring people into that empowerment place and be able to make money and a living through that. Absolutely. And then I think the double down on that is so net positive that our industry then becomes one of the most powerful industries out there. I thought about this the other day. I was thinking, wow, you imagine the thousands of people that sit in hairdressing chairs every day. And there's a moment there to have your complete frame shifted into a place of empowerment. Imagine that on a global scale. Like, we would instantly be lifted because this veneer that we wear, this external veneer, unfortunately in our modern world, like the utility we've given it is one of disempowerment. Again, one of manipulation. We try to manipulate every millimeter of ourselves so the world sees us slightly differently because of our insecurities, because of our traumas, because of our conditioning. Now, how far does that go? Like, how far does that go until we all are just complete messes? Like, it's getting there now. Like, how far we've gone from natural. You know, you look at natural beauty when somebody walks in the door and then how they leave completely glamorized, changed every millimeter of them. It's pretty intense. And to say that's good and normal and like the thing we should aim for, we've got to be very careful with that, because beneath that veneer is a big foundation of disempowerment and insecurity and trauma a lot of the time. So that's where that whole rabbit hole goes of like, oh yeah, love making people feel better. Yeah, you gotta, for me, I had to understand why that made them feel better. Oh, because there was a big hole in their heart. And that gets sad. I know that's like a Debbie Downer on that whole situation, but for people like Owen and I, we can see those holes in the industry and we go, wow, okay, is there a different way? Is there a better framework? We're not saying the best, we're saying better, and it's definitely proven to be better.
Well, we have to try something different, don't we?
Yeah.
Like, if we don't try something different, everything's going to stay the same, and it doesn't look like it's going in a good direction, to me anyway, personally. And it's one of those things, it's like, you don't know until you do, and then once you know better, it's kind of, there's a responsibility there then to do better. So yeah, now that we have the awareness around what Leigh just spoke into, it's very hard, and I don't even like that language. Like, I'm very conscious of my own language these days, but it's a challenge for sure. There's a challenge there to keep doing it the same way. Like, I don't particularly want to do it the same way anymore because I don't feel like it's working for the most part. And it's not how I like to view my haircutting service. Like, it's getting behind the words, right? Like, one thing we speak into a lot in our consultation process as well is getting behind the words and trying to actually understand people, and becoming a good listener is huge. And I'm still working on that. I've historically not been a good listener in my life. I've done a lot of things from a very selfish place because that was my means of survival. And selfish almost has two different meanings. You know, it's like the selfish stuff we spoke into earlier. But, you know, my selfishness growing up was a means of survival because that was my way to like emotionally survive in the world, was to look after myself in that way. So I did everything in my power to manipulate how people would see me, which was to try and convince them that I was the person to get their hair done by, because I would make them feel cool, or like I was the hypey kind of guy to go to. And like that works to a degree, but does it empower people? No. it actually just empowers ourselves. Like, it empowered myself through a non-sustainable lens of like, okay, well, I'm going to have to keep this circus act up in order to keep this feeling coming through that I'm requiring. And that's just not, it's just not necessary for me right now anymore in my life. So yeah, if we can help the people that come into contact with us, who resonate with us, who align with us energetically, and we can give them a different outlook on the industry, on like what we're doing so in our day-to-day lives, I think that will make dramatic change in terms of the butterfly effect. And you know, we've seen that so far in our 3-day course participants and the people that we do education with, the people that we coach, the people who are in our space regularly have dramatically changed their lives and the lives of other people around them, just from seeing things in a different perspective or from a different place. And it's not to say that anything's better. It's not to say that there's a hierarchy or there's a right or there's a wrong. It's just, how free do you feel?
I use the word joy as well. I like how joyous is a person? How much joy do they really have about them and in their life? And that's a great marker. People can say what they want, but if they're not joyous, it doesn't look good for me. I take a second guess, you know, at those kinds of people. And I love the butterfly effect, like what you were talking to there is a really beautiful thing. And because we're sharing beings, right? We're going to share what we know. Let's face it, it's one of our ways of like being social. But if we're going to share, let's share empowerment. Like, let's share things that are going to build a better and beautiful world. Because like Owen said, it's just not looking good. Like, and that's not my opinion, that's stats. Like, if you look at any like mental health stats or any of that, it's just not looking good. Male and female, it's both going to the curb, really. So, and we notice that, and once you've seen and once you know a bit better, we feel obliged to do a bit better. And that's just where it comes from. And empowerment feels better for me. And I think it's important to talk about the word empowerment, because not from a place of like, what's the word? Empowerment can, for some people, can be like, oh, I'm just going to do and say what I want, and it's about me, and I should be able to do whatever I want. I think they take the word power and just focus on power, when I think empowered lends itself much more towards what we're talking about in the terms of like unlimited, trying to free yourself of the shackles of the conditioning that you've had to live a joyful life. And to not let the words of others get in the way, and the opinions and the reflections and the projections of other people get in your way. That to me is very empowering and very freeing. Righteousness, that's what the word I was thinking of. I think it's important to not take like a righteous stance in empowerment, because it gets just a bit messy then. We see that around the globe. Like, people take such a righteous stance when they're talking about empowerment on all sorts of things that it just looks a bit messy. And I think the righteousness doesn't look positive either. It looks negative, and it doesn't look joyous. It looks not fun.
Where is it coming from?
Where is it coming from? Exactly.
I think that's coming from ego. It's not coming from the true self.
Yeah.
It's coming from concept of self, that righteousness, because it's not how we behave as humans. We're herd mammals. We've turned into this society of overachievers through our striving for overachievement, through our disconnection from like being primal beings, essentially. You know, it's like at all costs, like, I want to manipulate everybody so I can make money. You know, the majority of reasons why we do things is to make money. And like, I feel like that's a big difference in our company now. And like, I can honestly say this, like, yes, there is times where we still do things, and we play the game and we put our stuff up online and we advertise and we market and we do all of the things that we know works psychologically. But now it feels different. Like now what we're selling isn't a hair course. So like the thing that we're trying to sell is actually freedom in a way.
Yeah.
It's freedom. And like, so that feels more aligned. That feels more empowered. And I was just thinking about that when you were talking about the word empowerment, and think about like the M at the start, like why is it EM? Like what's that about? And then if you flip that around, it's me. So what's the opposite of me? Us, or like it's a feeling that you spread. Empowerment is something that is spread. And like if we individually feel empowered, or we feel like we have control over our own lives, we have autonomy, then people are going to sense that and feel that, and we're no longer approaching things from a place of fear. Like I still do a few haircuts from time to time, but I couldn't give a single shit if my clients left tomorrow and went somewhere else. Like I'd be like, okay, cool. Like clearly I'm not giving you what you want, because now, like you were saying, the clients that I do have, they're getting more than a haircut. It's not just, I'm not talking to them about how they look. It's more like that just happens, and I play into that game, and I do that pretty well. But like, for example, Josh, my PT, like he comes to get a haircut. We have great conversations, and some of the conversations that we have, I've got into positions in those conversations where I'm giving him advice that I would give my coaching clients who are paying me to do that. Well, they're not even paying me, they're paying themselves for the accountability. Like that's what's happening there. But I'm talking to him about things in his business that could completely shift and change the way that his life is. I'm giving him information to help him also become unlimited in his thinking, in his being, in his way of operating. I was like, I never thought about it like that. And it's amazing what happens when we get a little bit of space to think. I just reflect on past versions of myself being even in the barbershop setting and just never having space to even think about doing anything different. Not even having the space to think. Like I would go to work, whatever it was, 4 days a week, the 4-day work week, which was really 5 days and 4 days. Sold the dream. 4-day work week, 3 days at the weekend. Like, but if the culture at the weekend is to drink and to party and to go out and to get wasted, 2 of those 3 days are written off completely. And the third one is the opportunistic day to actually do something that is going to benefit my future self. And that's where I was. And I did a lot even in those times, which is amazing. And I speak to people about this all the time who are in this position right now. And it's like, what are you doing in your spare time? And also, what are you doing when nobody's watching? And that's a big conversation as well. But if the culture is to, work your ass off and then rest, and work your ass off and then rest, that in itself, my friends, is the hamster wheel. That is a dangling carrot. And, if you're constantly chasing that and you never take any space to stop, look around and see that, I don't actually have to chase this carrot, because there's plenty of carrots, and there's actually different plants, and there's different vegetables all around this field that we're in, because we're in a field of life. The world is one big thing. So why are we just chasing one dangling carrot? And I've made very little money in my life, little to no money when I was cycling, to now being in the position where, we're making and seeing more money than we have ever, really. And it's funny how little of a shit I kind of give about it, as long as we have enough for our needs to be met. It's like, are our needs met? Are we working towards more freedom? Are we setting ourselves up for the life that we want to live? And I actually spoke to my mom about this last night. I was chatting to her. She's kind of heading for retirement now, and she's getting into these conversations around, you know, retiring, because she's a hairdresser. And I was like, be very careful who you speak to. And it's not even be careful who you speak to. Speak to as many people as you want, but just be mindful of their biases and opinions that come out in those conversations, because everyone's opinions and biases, if they're coming from a place of fear and not from a place of love, then they're probably not the best pieces of advice to take on. So luckily enough for me, I always was fairly strong-minded when it came to working in certain environments in my time in our industry, and, you know, having certain fear projected onto me, having certain opinions and different things projected. And I was always able to look at it from a place of, do I like the way that person lives and like how they're living their life, and do I want to optimize for that? And if I listen to their advice, it means I'm going to take their journey, which is meaning the advice they're giving me is actually selfish advice, because they want to pull people into their world. I want more friends in this place that I'm in, because what you're doing to me is scary. You searching for something different and you trying to do something different is scary to me. So I'm going to tell you what I think, so that you just follow my path. So I have a friend who stays in the same fucking cycle.
So no friends in the industry.
That's what Drake said, isn't it?
Who?
No, look, there's loads of friends in it, and it, when the awareness is there to see it from that lens, it no longer becomes that's not me being a victim by any circumstance. So I'm just sharing that because I know that there's going to be a lot of people who do listen to this who feel similarly about people in their lives. Even the people and our family members, the ones that we love the most, can sometimes fundamentally give us the worst advice, all from a place of selfishness, not from a place of what's the word I'm looking for? It's not coming from a bad place. Like, they don't mean it in a bad way. It's just,
it's limited.
It's just they want to see us safe, but they also want to feel safe themselves. So it's not coming from a bad place.
A lot of it, I think, as well, I just had this experience lately, is it depends what you're exposed to as well, doesn't it? Like life experiences. Like I just went back to the UK, to my hometown a few weeks ago, and I was having this chat with one of my friends about this, and I was like, wow, this person said this and this person thinks like this, and he was just like, well, what do you really expect? That's the only way they've ever had to think, because their world doesn't go much further than this. I was like, yeah, you're right, actually. So I've got a compassion for that too, and that was a big eye-opener to have those moments, and to realize maybe, yeah, I just, all that advice I can take with a pinch of salt, because it comes from a limited lens. And again, look into the points of like, do I like, that was great advice that Owen just gave, was like, look at the people that you're talking to and just ask yourself, do I like the way that their life is going? Do I like what I see? Because I ask myself that all the time, and sort of 80% of the time, it's a no. It's a hard no. I don't like what that looks like. There's only been really about 20% of people that I look at and I think, yeah, that looks okay. And a lot of those people aren't even in my sphere. No. They're like online.
Distant mentors.
Yeah, they're distant mentors. And even then, we only see the highlights. So maybe I don't even really like that. And that's why it's so important to put yourself right first.
It's amazing.
You have to put yourself first, because your world is your world. Create your world. It really is true. We are the star of our own show. And with a bit of empowerment, a bit of freedom, we get to create that how we want to. And this isn't necessarily like, you know, I've had these chats with people about like individualism. Yeah, individualism does only go so far. But I think if you don't think about yourself at all, lose yourself in the pursuit of just trying to be someone else, it gets dangerous. But it also gets dangerous on the flip side. When it's complete individualism, we can start getting into like narcissistic traits then. But all of the things we just spoke about here, even the manipulation piece, that's a psychopathic tendency. Manipulation. If we really dig into the psychology, and this is where it gets scary, this is why we talk to these things. Manipulation is a psychopathic trait. That's terrifying.
So basically people are turning into psychopaths for survival.
Yeah, individualism.
That's how like what Leigh put up on his Instagram a few weeks ago, it's not physical survival that we speak to, it's emotional survival.
Yeah.
Like, am I going to be abandoned? Am I going to be loved? It's that type of survival.
It's a strange scenario we're in right now, isn't it? There's never been more people on the planet, yet our need to be acknowledged and seen is so heightened. But is that the way it works? Does the acknowledgement get watered down because there's so many people? You know, say if there was only 150 people in Melbourne, you'd be seen and acknowledged by everybody. Oh, great, I feel safe. But when there's X amount of million, it's watered down.
But it's like what we're acknowledging now, as well as the kind of benchmarks for success. Because like listening to what we just spoke about, what Leigh just spoke into, and what I spoke to before about looking at these people and thinking, oh, is that how I want to live my life? I'm sure a lot of us go straight to like somebody who works all the time but makes no money and is like really unhappy. It's an easy stereotype to like follow that journey and path. But there's also people, and we just spoke about this earlier when we were getting a coffee, there's also people who are perceived to be in the upper echelons of life, who are making millions and millions of dollars. Let's talk about somebody. Stephen Bartlett. Had this conversation with Corey during a coaching call last week about Stephen Bartlett, and Stephen's been putting out like vlog episodes like on the diary, like and like I love Stephen and I love his podcast, and it's been huge for me. It's been a game changer. But seeing the way he lives his life, I'm not sure that I aspire to that, you know. I'm not sure that I aspire to that. So like it goes on both sides. It's not just looking at the person, the low-hanging fruit, and being like, oh, I don't want to be like that. It's also looking at the people who are, again, perceived to be in the upper echelons of life and the world and making millions and millions of dollars, and people are benchmarking them as the end goal. Like I want to be like that guy only because he's got money. But you know nothing else about how he feels, what his life looks like, what he has to do in order to achieve what he achieves and get that money. So like money is only one way of kind of measuring it, and like it's actually not my highest measure of contentment or fulfillment. The ability to choose what I do every day and what I do with my life, and to have no limits, to that feeling of being unlimited, is my highest value. And I think no amount of money could change that, because ultimately, like, what are we pedestaling in life these days? What have we, as a society at large, turned into the benchmark for success or to be happiness? Everyone at large, I hate putting everyone in the bracket, but the majority of people at large think that when I get this much money, then I'll be happy. But quite often, the manipulation and the way of getting to that much money can actually put you in the hamster wheel, and it's not always, the grass isn't always greener. It actually, more money comes more problems. With more problems comes more stress. More stress comes more unhappiness. Before you know it, you're in a different hamster wheel. Yeah, you're just going from one hamster wheel to another. Jumping into a different one, a slightly bigger one, which takes more power to turn around, and it's a bigger wheel. It's like the whole thing trying to get the followers, right? Like I hear this a lot about, like, you know, everyone will hear this a lot. Oh, this person, this is who they are, and this is how many followers they have. And it's like, who fucking cares? Like, how many of those followers are paying customers? And who even cares about that? How many of those followers actually really are true aligned people within their lives. I'm trying to kind of frame this in the best way possible, but for us, like I refrain even from using the word client. I feel like I have to use the word clients. I feel like I have to use the words in order for, you know, universal language to be understood. But even when people come to our classes, I don't like to call them students, because that's to assume that I know more than them. They're just attendees they just come and they're in our space. They're just other people who are in our space. But, you know, when we're marketing to markets at large who don't know this stuff about us and don't know the way that we think, sometimes I type things and I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel right, but this is the game that we're playing, and this is what gets the attention, because it's like, show them the illusion until they're ready for the truth. Sometimes we have to bring the illusion to the fore in order to bring people into our space, and then once you're in with us, then we'll give you the truth, because that's the qualification process. And yeah, be careful what you wish for is kind of the main message there.
Yeah, oh, it's huge. And in all of that, you know, what I just see, and I think the same thing, you know, I look at all these people making millions and hundreds of millions, and even back to Stephen, like, there'd be so many people that want to be like him, and there's even people here in Australia that, you know, people want to be like, and it's rarely what they have or what they've got or what they do, what people want. It's the feelings that they get from it. It's what the things that they have bring them. And what is it that it brings them? Notoriety. And what is notoriety? Acknowledgement. And what is acknowledgement? It's a feeling of belonging. That's it. It goes right back to what I said. Why is our need for acknowledgement and to be seen and heard so heightened in this modern world? There's never been more people. And I think it is a mix of like what we've done with pedestaling success in terms of like monetary success. We're all just chasing. But we're leaving behind the planet. We're leaving behind the soil. We're leaving behind our health. We're leaving behind our mental health, our mental fitness. And that's the core. None of this can happen without all of that, which is terrifying. Yet we're chasing for this thing, for a bit of notoriety, to get a bit of acknowledgement, just to feel safe, when really we've got to look at, okay, so if that's the feeling that I would prefer to have most of the time, is this the most sustainable way to get it? And that's a hard no from me. And that's how we look at all of our systems. We just take them down the rabbit hole and we go, well, what does it get back to a feeling standpoint? Is that sustainable? Yes or no? If it's a no, get rid of it, find a better system. That's it. And right now, I mean, I've had this revelation lately, and I know I shared it with you. It's like, yeah, there's just, I feel a sense of joy and a sense of freedom in life. And it's just really just hit me lately. Like, somebody asked me when I was back in the UK, like, so what's the number then? How much money is it when you've made it? And I was like, it's not a number, it's a feeling. And in that moment, I realized I've got that feeling right now. I've got that feeling of freedom. I can move around the world. I can work. My calendar is my calendar. I choose what I do and when I do it. Brilliant. And that's all I've ever been looking for. And in that, I get to think. I get to focus on my health. I get to care about the world. And I get to put all my first values above everything, which is such a beautiful way to live. And it doesn't, I mean, look, it doesn't take that much money either, which is fantastic. And
we only have to liaise with a few people, don't we, on certain things?
Yeah, yep.
And that's people who we choose to have in our lives as well.
Yep. It's such a beautiful way to live. It's an empowering way to live.
Yeah, it absolutely is. There's a lot of contradiction in the world as well these days, you know, like the contradiction of chasing the certain things and the money and the this and the that. It's like something that I picked up on there, which has been a huge value of mine, and it's actually flipped and changed absolutely everything in my life, is the value of health. And I think, you know, there's still a lot of work to be done within that. You know, I still sometimes don't eat the things that are the best for me. But isn't it funny, speaking to the contradiction, isn't it funny that we spend all of our time in our lives working really hard for the money that we're going to spend in hospital?
Oh yeah,
Just speaking generally.
I've known
It's
this for a long time.
It's like, okay, I'm doing this work to get the money that I think is going to give me the freedom, but really it's just money that I'm paying back to the system through my medical bills because I'm going to be sick.
Yeah. In a modern system, it's not freedom, it's safety. It's like, how much money can I gather? How much money can I collect in my life to hopefully take care of all my ailments later on in life?
But what if we could just stop like we have and just start looking after our health now and allocating some more of our resources of time, which is another currency, into looking after our health? Is that not more of a play at longevity? I was thinking about that. We speak into unsustainability and sustainability. And sustainability, Leigh always says, is to keep things the same. Keeping things the same as they are. We go to Industry Day, we go to these different things, and they all talk about sustainability. But, to really think about what sustainability means is to keep things the way they are. I prefer the word longevity. And it's not just having, things like just barely kind of surviving, because sustainability speaks to kind of survival a little bit more, whereas longevity speaks to growth. And to me, it feels more like, okay, we're actually trying to evolve and grow and thrive rather than survive. So that's a nice little play with how to think about it. And is what we're doing right now in our lives, does it come with longevity? Do we have longevity in our everyday actions? Is what I'm doing right now going to be, I don't want to say sustainable, but can I do what I'm doing right now in 10 years, 20 years?
Is it still going to be useful? And is it still going to have the same utility?
And is my mental health and my physical health going to be intact? Because since I've started looking after myself more in that regard, everything in my life has got better. Everything in my life has got better. It's funny what the universe does when you start showing up for yourself. Everything in my life has got better. My relationships, how I'm feeling, my aches and pains, I don't really have any. And I thought it would be the opposite. I thought that, if I start going to the gym and doing this and doing that, it will actually just make me sore, and then that will depreciate my work, or it won't help me with work. So, but it's actually been the opposite.
It's incredible.
So yeah, that's the life we're kind of living right now. We're aiming for that longevity. We're playing the longer game. And it's, Peter Attia, I was listening to Peter Attia and Stephen talking this morning, and he speaks into that. It's like, would we not, I think there's an inability right now from society at large to do things now that are going to benefit us in 10, 20, 30 years. Instant gratification and the world of wanting things now is profound, and it kind of approaches life in a very much or mentality, not and. It's like, I can have this or this. Like, I better do this or I'm not going to have this. Whereas, why can't we do both? Like, why can't it be an and universe? There's times in my life where I was just walking past a co-working space that I used to work in, and we used to work in from time to time together as well. And the person who I was when I first started in business in those kinds of spaces was thinking hustle culture, like hustle mentality. I have to be here 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day in order for my business to be successful, because that's what entrepreneurs and business people do. Whereas now I'm like, but what am I doing it all for? And I've had this moment lately. I was kind of sitting around at home, and there's times where I feel a little bit like overwhelmed or a little bit anxious, or there's a feeling of like discomfort. And I feel like a lot of that comes from the old patterns and not realizing, like you were just saying a minute ago, Leigh, like not realizing, maybe I am here already. And I think it's our lack, it's the lack of the amount of people that we meet these days. Because we don't meet a lot of people,
True.
so we don't have a lot of context or perspective as to like where they are. And I think when I do, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, but when I do meet people and really get into a good discussion with them about how they're feeling, I come away with a lot of gratitude. I leave most interactions now with people thinking, wow, I am so grateful for my life right now.
That's it. To your point about doing things now for, you know, a lot from more of a longevity lens, like you say, instant gratification is the thing. You know, we're all trying to play into that game. But the delayed gratification is a huge one as well. The patience piece is massive. And if we look to psychology for this, right? So if you've got something that you do now, short-term gain for long-term downturn, so long-term negative, that's an addiction. They call that an addiction. So how do you free yourself from an addiction? You do things for yourself now for long-term upside, which is the opposite of an addiction, which is freedom, unlimited thoughts and beliefs, and longevity. So that's where I think our world is. We're addicted to being addicted. We're just so far down the addiction rabbit hole. We need more distractions for our addictions. We need more things, because the pain of not being seen, heard is too much to bear for a lot of people. And maybe we just need to get a bit more stoic again. You know, there is a bit of pull your socks up in life. You know, there is a bit of shit's just gonna happen. Like, welcome to the playground. Like, things are gonna happen. The only constant in life is uncertainty. You can't be certain about everything. It's just uncertain how this thing's gonna plan out. That's where I see it all right now. So I think if we can start to become more like futurists in the way that we think, do things now for long-term upside, I think that'll be great. But you know, that can only start by going inward, thinking of yourself, developing your preferences in life. What are your highest values? Then moving through life from there so you can serve from the highest degree.
I think a common misconception is that we can't enjoy ourselves now whilst we're in the pursuit of the longer term thing. And that's where the instant gratification thing gets confused, I feel, for a lot of people internally. It's like, I can't, but I want it now, and I want to have these feelings now. And it's like, but you can, like, it's always flittering moments.
Yeah.
Like, there's going to be moments where it feels uncomfortable, but there's also going to be moments where it feels very good.
I don't think, and this is just one man's opinion, I don't think a lot of people know what joy is. I don't really know what I think that a lot of people know, because to your point of, oh, I want it now. Oh, I want to go to the club now. I want the shoes now. I want the clothes now. I want the haircut now. It's like, okay, but all of those things are distractions for addictions that translate to, I'm running away from a feeling right now. I can't bear a feeling, so I've got to run away from it. Now, that's a dangerous place to be, I think. It's just more short-term actions for long-term downside, and it just compounds negative, and everything really gets worse. Sadly.
Yeah.
And that people find joy in that, and of course that's joyous, because that's the stress relief cycle. Oh, I've got some stress relief. They find so much joy in the relief of their stress that people's worlds are built purely for the relief of stress, and they find joy in that, which isn't necessarily bad. Like, you know, we need relief from stress, but it's what we let stress us in the first place is
that's
the
the
key.
real addiction.
That's the key there.
That's the thing. There wouldn't be a need for relief if there wasn't a need for stress.
Exactly.
And like, sometimes it's sneaky. Like, the things that we think that we're addicted to or not addicted to can be sneaky. Like, often it might not be the thing that you're, like, the relief of, say, getting a haircut, using that as an example, to relieve some stress is not actually the addiction. It's the addiction to the stress in the first place. They're both addictions.
Yeah.
It's the addiction to the stress. And people who are addicted to those stress cycles, from my experience and witnessing it, keep doing shit that make them stressed in order to get that feeling again. And, you know, quite often it comes from early childhood, or it comes from environment of growing up. You know, a lot of the time, if people lived in a very stressful environment growing up, that's how they learned to seek, you know, love or safety. So that was their environment. That's where they were born and bred through that period of time. So what do? They attract people, situations, circumstances in their lives that keep them stressed.
Yeah. And that's a lot of people. You know, I think a lot of people could say that they had stressful upbringings over the last kind of couple of generations, and that really translates into, there's no wonder our systems and society is the way it is, because if you look at the general 9 to 5, like how people are spending their weeks, they're at work 5 days a week and they take 2 days off. That in itself is a stress relief cycle. Okay, you're going to have to do shit that you don't really want to do for 5 days, and then I'm going to give you 2 days off. Stress relief, stress relief. And what do I do in the relief? All the things in the world that is net negative. And look, that's a generalization. That's not everybody, but I would say that's probably 75% of people. And I think our message is, it can look different. I forget what bloody day of the week it is sometimes, because I'm trying to bring joy and my highest values to every day. I don't care if it's a Sunday. I don't care if it's a Tuesday. I don't care if it's a Thursday. I do very similar things all the time. And I have joy 99% of the time.
Yeah.
It's great. And in those 1%ers, I've got so much room to think. The 1% that it's not so good, I've got so much room to think that I can actually just calm my nervous system, regulate, and just come back to a centered self again and be like, oh, it's all okay. Because we're only ever addicted to a feeling. We're all out here trying to get a haircut, trying to get a clothes. Oh, this is so important. Blah, blah. No, it's not. It's the feeling that is important that you get from it. And that's where all of our addictions and our distractions come from. It's the feelings. And we all are. We're feelings machines. And what are feelings? Energy. Where does the energy go? Through our nervous system. We are feelings machines, and that's what we do. It's just what we're conditioned to and what we allow to take over the capacity of our nervous system. That changes everything. And it can be rewired. It can be reconditioned. You can do it. Some things are deep. Some things are really stuck in there. But it can be reconditioned. Mm-hmm. And that's the work. That's the journey. That's the freedom journey.
Yeah.
That's the unlimited journey, is to unravel the system, really.
The freedom machine. The freedom machine.
The freedom machine.
And it's quite powerful stuff, actually. It's quite potent to really be able to see it from that lens. You know, a lot of the time when hearing stuff like this for the first time, like when I heard things like this for the first time, it was almost like existential. It was like, fucking hell, I can't believe I've been doing this stuff to myself for so long. Like, oh my God. And then falling into a shame hole, or like a place of guilt or shame. And that in itself is even an addiction. You know, I got addicted to that, going through that burnout phase last year of feeling guilt, feeling shame. Like that was also an addiction, a pattern that needed to be broken. And, you know, I get bored very quickly. Of things. I said something to my mom like maybe about a month ago. I was like, you've been on this earth now for like nearly twice as long as me. Like, does every week not just seem like boring? Like, are you just repeating the same thing over and over again? She's like, she took it from the place of like the industry and like hair. She's like, oh no, but I just love the people and I love, but they're this and they're but can you just see the conditioning in that, even the excuses that are conditioned and programmed into the hardware? They're there and ready to be used when it comes up. But like, what feelings do you really get from it? And then, you know, the compassion comes in, because if you don't know any different, how can you tell the difference if you haven't tried anything else or done anything else? And, you know, I had that conversation with her last night about like, and Hannah said it to her too. She said, you know, you'll be amazed when you give yourself the space without the hair to see what else comes through from a creativity standpoint and a creativity point of view. Like, now that we don't do hair as our main source of income, the amount of things that have opened up and like the amount of possibility we see for things is just unfathomable compared to before. Like being in the barbershop, being consumed and busy, is pedestaled. That's pedestaled because it's keeping people in a certain loop. And it's keeping them in a loop where they're useful to somebody else. So it's all a form of manipulation. And I think if anyone is to say it any different and think different, because I know people will be triggered by that, especially people who own shops, because yes, there is people who own shops who do it from a point of view like where they understand that it's the game and this is just what it is, and that people need to make a living and they're giving people money in order for them to make a living and helping them make a living, and that is part of it too. And I get that, but when it comes to the point of greed and selfishness, which it quite often does, then there's an honesty pandemic that fucking comes up, because people can't just be honest about what it is, like the reason why they're actually doing things.
That's what comes up for me. Like, I've got to have compassion for that whole thing, because what's on the other side of it? Responsibility and honesty. And if you ain't ready to take responsibility and honesty, then yeah, that can look quite scary. So I get it. I have compassion. The kind of addictive and distracting nature of the world that we live in serves a purpose, serves a utility, because on the other side, it can look quite scary because of how much accountability and responsibility and honesty you've got to have. Now, we welcome it. Owen and I, we've gotten to a point where we just welcome all of that. But yeah, I can understand why that would look scary for a lot of people. But sometimes it pays, to zoom out, bird's eye view, and just look at the trap you're in sometimes. Because it looks quite scary from the outside.
Yeah, and it's just, it's not our fault. We were born into the world like this. And it's not anybody's fault, but it is our responsibility now if we know better. So like, that's why, there's almost a part of me that like resists hiring people. There's a part of me that resists hiring people because I know for the most part what that would be for. And I want to hire people when we're in a position where we can really give them the empowerment that we would like to have as an employee. Because not everyone wants their own business. Not everyone is set out for their own business and to be in business. It's not necessarily an easy thing to do. But yeah, I don't want to be subject to that. But yeah, look, it's everyone is on their own journey. Everyone is on their own path. I think there's a lot of people in business who are doing it really well. And quite oftentimes being an employee in a good environment can be a better way of living than actually owning a business for some people.
I think done well, done right, being a high performing employee is amazing. When you do it well, when you choose that's not chosen for you, it's a powerful place to be. When you choose it, and that's a whole other podcast to talk about that, but when you choose being that number one or number two employee and you do that well, and all the things you reap from that, you use that well, that's very powerful. But I rarely ever see it.
And it's also still within that your responsibility to be the best version of yourself so that you can put yourself in that position to have autonomy, because you don't have to be number one in a business to have autonomy. If you're having, say for example, somebody came to work with us and they were shit hot at what they did and they were niche specific in a certain area of what they did, they get good enough and they bring enough value to us, they get to choose what it is that they do and how they work, and there's a lot to that. So yeah,
There it is. Beautiful conversation.
And I think, it'd be nice to have these types of conversations every week, and coming from that place of empowerment, also a place of enlightenment, exposing our points of views to the world of being unlimited, and sharing our journey of becoming unlimited. I think it's going to be fun.
Yep. Can't wait to share it. So is that episode 2? Or is it? No, it's just episode 1 really, isn't Calling that one episode 1, yeah.
Episode 1, because we didn't have a name last time, so.
Last one was the pilot episode.
Yeah. The episode before the episode. Episode 1 of the Unlimited podcast with Leigh and myself, Eoin. Don't forget to do all of the things that people do these days on YouTube and Spotify, and give us a like and a share, and rate us, please, because that's going to help us do more of these. And we plan to bring guests on, special guests who have also reached these stages of life where they're on that pursuit of being unlimited, or they fit the bill, they fit the criteria. And it's going to be a fun journey doing this. This feels easy. Like, doing this is going to be really enjoyable, I think, for us.
Yep.
This feels really easy. So excited for the future.
Love it.
Any last words?
Stay unlimited.